Okay, hi everybody. Well, joining me here today, I have Deconverted Man, the YouTuber Deconverted Man, also known as Dan. Hi Dan, how are you?
Hey, how's it going?
Good to see you. Good to see you, my friend. We've been trying to set this up for a while now, but it's took a little bit of organising, hasn't it? Mainly my end, I would say.
Yes, it has.
I'm a busy man. I'd like to say with intellectual pursuits all of the time, but it's a lot more mundane than that. most of it, unfortunately.
Fending off all the attacks of your videos.
So, first thing then, maybe I should just introduce you a little bit. I know you think you've been on YouTube for about 4 years, and of course we share a little bit of YouTube space. You know, I always think of YouTube as sort of like concentric little circles that are overlapping, and I think that our circles overlap quite a bit because we're both YouTube atheists, but we've both got involved in the social justice issues as well. But I have a feeling that you're sort of your entree into all this is a little bit different to mine. Is that right? Because I think you're from quite a religious upbringing.
Yes, I was raised, I guess, what you would call basic American Christian, in that, we had religion and we went every Sunday to church, but it wasn't really like we would always be talking about God and stuff. And I think that that's really the way it is for a lot of people, is that it's there, it's something you think about, but it's not really an active part of your life per se, and it's not really something I would pursue until I was like a older teenager and then an adult, where I wanted to make it mine. So here's
Yeah.
this thing that I grew up with, but it wasn't enough to just kind of dabble my foot into it. I wanted to really dive into it and make it my own. So I think that that's where you get towards the more fundamentalists, where if they were born as a fundamentalist, then they really dive in even deeper.
Yeah.
But it all depends on the person.
So how did that then obviously you lost that religion that you'd been brought up in, that faith you'd been brought up in, and felt some motivation, I suppose, to talk about it on YouTube. Is that sort of how it came about?
Yeah, basically I deconverted because of the final straw being learning informal logic. I had been going towards and into apologetics. I had learned about it and it was really exciting. Like, okay, I'm going to prove my faith to people. But before that, I'd been doing on YouTube for about a year this character I would call Infinite Hope, and just sharing God and my faith and my ideas to people. And all these pesky atheists kept asking me these questions like, oh, what about this and what about that? And I would try to respond to them and think about them honestly. And I was like afraid and worried about these poor atheists, that for me, it was more about the experience. Oh, they're missing out this experience. And I made this analogy that it was like, I've been parachuting, I've been skydiving, but I can't even convince them that there's an airport to take out of, nonetheless a plane or a parachute in the first place. I can't even get them to that. And I'm like, but then again, I've never been skydiving, so I needed a different analogy. But that I've had this experience, and I didn't want them to miss this experience. And later, I learned that due to the way that our brains are different, some people literally can never have that experience no matter what, because their brain just can't do it. So that's kind of that only makes sense in evolution. It doesn't make sense under a God concept, because God made some people with brains that can't experience God, when that's the main tenet of the point of the theology, is to experience God. That doesn't make any sense at all.
It's pretty harsh, doesn't it, from God's perspective? Really, like you're stuffed to eternal torment.
They'll be fine.
Yeah. And so that got you onto YouTube, I suppose. So you'd already made a start on YouTube, and then obviously started doing the kind of thing that I was doing. albeit from a slightly different perspective, as I've never had a religious upbringing. I don't really know where my motivation came from, to be honest. It's just an interest in the subject that I'd always had. But we both, I suppose, have shifted across, haven't we, to social justice issues, which is what we're talking about today. What was it that motivated you to make that shift?
Well, I'm slowly dipping my toe in, and every now and again I'll make some video where I take a little teeny poke at it. I'm nowhere near your level or and far away from, you know, Tildir or Sargon of Akkad or whatever, who always go after these things. But I'm learning more about the postmodernist movement and the feminist movement, the SJWs, and these ideologies that have existed for a while, and I'm just becoming aware of them.
Yeah.
And I think that many people out there could be just becoming aware of them. Then you might have heard the word feminist thrown around, and it's just, oh, that's the way that women are empowering themselves. I'm a feminist and burned my bra in the 60s, whatever. And that would be the end of it. You wouldn't think more of it. And I think a lot of the times you hear the word feminist is in general average everyday life would be that sort of idea where it's the dictionary definition and not this ideology that we've come to know and despise on YouTube. So when you say feminist and you say they're bad, or you say that this is garbage, and people go after the issues that they think that feminism is about, which are important issues, and it's like, no. I'm talking about this ideology here. Yeah. And you're talking about something, you're talking about what they say that they're supposed to be interested in. I'm looking at the logic, or rather lack of logic, that these groups have and the similarities that they have to fundamentalists, and how scary it is when these groups get into power, and when they get any law on their side, how scary that becomes. Especially when we're seeing that in Canada with, you know, Jordan Peterson has become a prominent, you know, point of, here's this guy speaking about free speech and also not having to say certain words. And that the fact that they have a tribunal of any kind in Canada, that word shouldn't exist in this day and age. You know, it's like it's a court. Don't we call them courts? No, it's a tribunal. That makes me think of, like, you know, the Salem, you know, and the tribunals there. But maybe it's just a negative connotation I'm coming up with. I don't know, but it is scary stuff. And when you really examine their lack of logical teachings that they teach each other, it's really apparent why they believe what they believe and how much it is like a religion and how it functions.
Well, I'll ask you about that in a second, but just to pick up on what you said about the way that it tends to get conflated, I absolutely agree with that, and I think that's part of the problem with it is that it's, the term connotes so many different things, you know, from a goal or a very basic ideology, which is, I think, like you say, what most people think of first off. But then you have all these different movements, and then you go into something which Christy Winters talked about, I recall, in a conversation with Sargon, when she had a debate with Sargon, if you remember back to that.
Oh,
which
yeah.
I found it quite scary.
I was going to mention that too, yeah.
Well, I found it quite scary, the levels she went to with that, because she said about the fact that it's also, it's an area of academic study, but also an academic methodology. And she said that in the social sciences, or in that particular area of gender studies, it is the only game in town. And she didn't even seem to see a problem with that, that a theory, feminist theory, a theory that effectively is I mean, just the name of it, it gives you some cause for concern if what you're talking about is a foundational way of looking at things which you should be looking at from a neutral basis. She said that that is the only game in town, but didn't seem to see a problem in that. So there are these different levels, aren't there, I think, that get conflated. It make it very difficult to talk about it with people who aren't involved in the same conversations that you're involved in.
Right. Imagine if we had at university level creationism being taught. as if it was science. And you had the creationist web pages that are out there, uh, being held up as these, critical peer review websites, and that was being taught as if it was real. And then you see the result of the people coming out of that with their PhD in religion or philosophy or even science, and making all these insane statements about reality, and you saying no, and then
Yeah.
saying, well, but I've got all this academia behind me, how dare you say no, you're not
Yeah.
at my level, you don't understand. And it's that sort of ideology where you come into believing it somehow at some point, maybe a very little bit. You're curious, and then you get into it, and then everyone's telling you it's real and true, and you come out thinking it's real and true. What a surprise!
Yeah. Just to go back as well to the bit that you'd said about perhaps the way you're gradually picking up into these subjects, is that I think when you started, what was that, about 2013, 2014, something like that, you probably have just missed the particular spat with Atheism Plus and the Free Thought blog stuff.
Yeah,
And
I
I think that
I
shaped a lot
grazed
of us.
that.
Really. It got us off to very much to a flying start. It hit us from nowhere, really, or it seemed to do. Obviously, some of these organizations and movements had been going on for some time, but we weren't really that aware of it, most of us. And then all of a sudden, there seemed to be like this ideological juggernaut driven into the side of it, starting to impose things on it which might be interesting things in themselves and might be worthy things in themselves, but were actually rather divisive,
Right. Yeah, my working hypothesis is when you add the plus symbol to anything, it gets worse.
Yeah.
LGBT plus, and that's really bad. They were fine when there was just LGBT, and because
Yeah.
you can't focus on that many things, and it's wrong to think that your group, which is doing a good thing, your cause is doing a good thing, to focus on so many things and treat them all the same. That's not going to work.
No.
And
Agree with
maybe
you.
they would have been better off as just being L and G and whatever by themselves. I don't know, but
Yeah. Well,
regardless.
there was a fascinating discussion actually on the Atheism Plus forum, which I made a video on back at the time, regarding LGBT, and they were arguing over the order in which the letters were there. Because they were saying it shows typical oppressive, that trans are at the end, but the
Oh
person who was
my word.
arguing somebody had put GLBT, so it's
Yeah.
men were in front of women, and trans people were pushed right to the end. They didn't seem to realize that however you write it, it's going to be in some kind of order, whether you have to write it in a different order on each take or something like that, I don't know.
Oh my word.
But I mean, that was exactly what you say there, is that there was this conflation of issues, and to me it seemed kind of bizarre that some of these were good issues, like gay rights,
Oh yeah,
like
absolutely.
sticking up for people who are leaving their religion, but to try and put those two together, I think then you can end up with people having the prejudice that they have, doing harm to both those issues.
Right.
If you're
Here's the
trying to say,
way that I've
yeah,
been coming at this lately. I've been exploring to see if this question works. Is okay. So you have issue X, Y, and Z that you think are important, and you have this label, but the label has become poison. What do you do? And if they say, well, no, we have to maintain the label, they have to, that's important because it's been hurt in the past and we have to show how good it is. If there's any answer like that, then they are in an ideology not concerned with the issue. Because if I thought for one moment that discarding the label skeptic would get more people interested in skepticism, I would do it. If I thought that,
yeah,
not calling myself an atheist would somehow help people get rid of their God ideas, then I would do that, because that's the issue I care about, is people learning informal logic, because that's what got me out of religion. That's got me into thinking and learning more things I could ever learn before. So when you ask people, okay, you care about these issues, or at least you say you do. Okay, I'm gonna assume that you really care about them. Yet you're calling yourself this, and you can see that people don't like this label. Why just not get rid of that? Oh, because it's important. Wait a minute, then you're really not caring about the issues. You're really caring about your group identity. Your tribalism is higher than your compassion.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I've seen people argue about that actually with statistics and people who identify as atheist rather than just people who say they don't believe in a god or gods or a supreme spirit or something like that. Ultimately, it's the latter of those two things that really matters. Whether they choose to adopt a particular label or not, I couldn't give a damn. That's
right,
an interesting question in itself, is it really?
You shouldn't become an atheist. You should become, or a skeptic. You should start to think critically, because that will lead you to the conclusion anyway. So it doesn't. The label is, who
we all have
cares?
slightly
Whatever. Call ourselves whatever we want. You know.
We all have different definitions to these things anyway. So
right,
whether or not
exactly.
you might say, well, I don't believe in God, but I don't call myself an atheist. Well, that's fine. I'm still going to call you an atheist because that's how I categorize things. So
but
I think
you can't, because the Canadian law, that's how I prefer my pronoun, and you'll go to jail. Well, you won't go to jail. You'll owe all this money, and then when you can't pay it, then you'll go to jail. So, but I wanted to talk about the presuppositionalism and how I've seen a very direct correlation with the postmodernism.
Yeah, well, crack on. Give us a bit of an introduction to that. Yeah.
Right. That in theology, in the apologetics arena, there's this presuppositional movement argument that basically is, I win the argument by virtue of that if you argue with me, I've won. Because logic itself can only be explained by God, and because we're using logic to argue, therefore there's God. So I've already won. So debate me, I win. Don't debate me, I win. And it's heads I win, tails you lose. Well, who wants to play that game? Nobody wants to play that game. But it's very attractive to those who think they're winning all the time at first. And so you see this huge spike in interest when it first comes on the scene, when a group hasn't heard about it. And suddenly, say you could track the rise and fall of Seitan Bergengate, for example, who became super famous with the big names that are out there for Christianity, and then disappeared sometime around after Matt Dillahunty completely annihilated him during his debate. And it's because they're breaking the metagame of life. People don't want to play the game with you where you always win, even if I don't play. And by the way, you've won even if I didn't know that I was playing this game. Because that's not a game anyone can really play. It's like the rules of the game are to cheat. Well, wait a minute. How do we play that game? It doesn't make sense. And
can I just say, I know when I've seen some of these presuppositionists, they also have this kind of position when they're challenged, don't they? Which is like, well, we're all presupposing something, and there's nothing to say that your very, very simplified set of presuppositions are any more valid than my incredibly complex, specific set of presuppositions.
Right. It's this inclusiveness that you're really part of my thing in the first place. You didn't even know that you were. You actually do believe in God deep in your heart. You just don't know it. You're denying it. So there you have the presupposition that they're playing this game where initially it seems like they're winning all the time, and so it's very attractive. But then people see that nobody likes them because they're breaking the metagame of life, which is to not just win games that we're playing in life. We play at our jobs. That's a game. We play actual games is a game, but it's not how you win, if you win or lose. It's how you play, because you want to be invited to more games. That's what you're trying to do. So when you break the metagame by cheating, then people don't want to be around you, or only cheaters want to be around you. And then even they start to distrust you if you always are cheating. So by doing that, you actually remove yourself from society, will reject you eventually. And so with the postmodernist ideology, which the SJW/feminism ties into, or is because of, or leads into, or blends into, however you want to put it, is all about destroying society as we know it, destroying culture as we know it. Specifically, it seems Western because its roots were in Marxism, but it's not always necessarily about that. And so the argument is we are right because we know how this should look, and it doesn't look the way that we know is absolutely right. And you're absolutely wrong. And if you're not on our side, you're wrong. So we win heads, and tails, by the way, you lost. So it initially has this attraction to it where it seems like we're always winning, but we're breaking the metagame. We're not playing by the rules. And so we're seeing people, as this gets more exposed, we're seeing people reject it more and more. And what happens is what happens with all sort of cult mentality is they're going to get stronger in their faith about these ideas initially, and eventually it will crash and burn, but they'll do a lot of damage on the way. And of course we have to help them to crash and burn sooner than later.
Yeah.
Because once they get laws into place, forget about it. That's then you're on an uphill battle trying to get rid of those laws, because you give government power, it's hard to get, it's like impossible to get that back.
Yeah, unless it's in the government's interest, it's often very difficult
And
to get
it's not,
politicians
because
interested in.
we're now in control of what you have to say, not mentioning what you can't say. Forget about that. Now you have to say certain words. Well, where does that stop? And
do you think perhaps part of the issue is that, and this ties in, I suppose, to sort of presuppositionalism in a wider sense, is that there's an element of presupposing going on in terms of the language that is used, and it's appealing language, so that when you talk about things like equality, well, we're about equality, feminism's about equality, you must be for equality, and of people, maybe 97% of people, let's say, are going to say they're for equality and are for equality, but it's presuming that actually what equality is actually quite a simple question, whereas it isn't, and there's lots of very legitimate ways in which you can actually formulate that from the beginning.
Right, and it's defining something into existence. That's what Christy Winters and others have tried to do, say, with her video that made me totally unsubscribe and realize what kind of person that is, proving patriarchy exists, where the citations are Wikipedia and stuff like this, which is fine if for a normal YouTuber, but this person has a PhD. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
And well, it's fine because of this, and I'm gonna make it better later on, which you never did. So okay. But what does that say? What does that say about your ideology, where it's okay that I do this or that is substandard because I want people, I just want to get people in. I don't care. I just want them in, right?
Yeah.
There's a girl that Jordan Peterson had taught. This came up to Jordan Peterson during one of the many times he was invaded by SJWs, and she says, "Do you support the Nazis here?" Like, she knows that there's Nazis at his rally somehow. Where are they? Point them out to me. Where's one? How do you know that they're here? Who? I mean, unless there's people with swastikas, how do we? What are you talking about? And then goes on and he says, I don't. And he starts talking about how he's studied that idea and how bad it is and all that. But she's not interested in that. She's already decided there's Nazis here. Then she goes on to ask him, or say that everybody that's protesting has watched all his videos. But when he mentions how long his videos are, how many he has, then that changes to, well, we've watched all your videos about this issue. And he's like, well, that's still however many hours. And she's like, well, are you really worth all that time? In other words, she lied. She didn't
Yeah.
Not only did she not watch any of his stuff, because why should she waste her time? She knows he's wrong. Oh, I know, I've watched enough. I know that you're a Nazi, and I know that that's what you support, and I know that that's what this is about. What? How is, and you look at the issue with that in particular. And when he said, her, oh, don't call me that. She doesn't want to be called a her, which is okay, whatever. So the issue of you are supposedly so offended that I'm calling you her or him rather than Zimmy Zoodle or Catapult Pancake or whatever it is, that is equal to putting you in a gas chamber and killing you by the dozens. I mean,
Yeah.
What reality are you in?
Yeah,
I'm not in that reality, and it is that level of disconnect with reality that is darn scary. And it's, they're peaceful now, but you're also seeing that when it's convenient, they won't be peaceful. You see that in Berkeley, where let's set things on fire, protesting this guy because he's speaking. We don't like Milo. It doesn't matter. He's saying things we don't like. Well, what's he saying? And some of the things, he's trying to be inflammatory. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to make a claim to fame by being a troll in real life. Okay, well, that's going to succeed for a while until it doesn't. Let him burn out on his own. If you ignore him, he would have gone away far sooner.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. A few people have said to me about his views on atheism. Just getting a bit of feedback from you.
Oh, yeah, well, he has outlandish, ridiculous.
Yeah, he said some things about atheism, but for me, I just took it all with a pinch of salt. I mean, it just seems so humorous. I didn't find it offensive at all, really. It just so over the top. It's obviously a bit of a wind-up,
Yeah,
and
I would
sort of
call
flavored everything else I've heard him say.
I would call him out to give citations and examples, because he'll say things that are just can't be true. Like, oh yeah, he said something about lesbianism where it's like, well, it's more fluid than it is with when you're a guy. You can't help but being gay, but you can sort of choose to be a lesbian or not. And I'm like, really? Based on what? Where's your studies? Where's your data? If you had that, then I would agree, but you don't, so you can't just make these statements as if they're true. But that's what you're doing. That's fine, but I would call you out on it and debate you on it. And that's what they're not doing. Yeah. By just protesting the speaker because they don't want to debate.
Do you think that's one of the things with Milo that people find scary, is that he actually highlights something that happens all the time on the television, and that is people just making unqualified statements that go unchecked, and his are maybe a little bit more extreme or a little bit more outlandish, but that doesn't make them more right or more wrong. It's just another example of the same kind of thing. I mean, I've seen quite a few clips of different feminists saying things, being asked to speak to something on the news, but then adding that, well, yes, this is all part of the patriarchy, or this is all caused by misogyny. And that always goes unchallenged in exactly the same kind of way. But yet it's made without any evidence whatsoever. The actual issue they're talking about might be true, but the attribution that's just been made has just been pulled out of the person's ass, effectively, and yet it's gone unchallenged.
And that's the importance of freedom of speech, is we all get to say what we want to say and how we want to say it. And so when you have somebody making these absurd remarks, you get up there, you get to a place where you can speak and you say, that's all nonsense and here's why. And you challenge them again and again to prove their nonsense. And then people realize, wait a minute, they're not doing that. They're not proving, they're not debating you. They're not responding to your reasoned, logic and all this. And they'll see, the public will see that. And it's not hard to do that. It's not hard to challenge people and call them out. Yeah. So with the postmodernist ideologies, you have, especially within, I saw it directly from feminism, this idea that debate is bad.
Yeah.
Because we are right, and they haven't read and studied all the things that we've studied, so they just don't, they're misinformed on the issues. They just don't understand what we understand. And so it's pointless to debate them. It's not your job to educate them. That's their job. They have to realize we're right, and they won't, but we'll keep telling them that we are until they come and learn and realize that we're right. You know, that strategy's not going to work in the long run, but it works
In
initially
the
because
short
it's
term, yeah, and in certain circles, doesn't it? Do you think there's been a shift within feminism, though, in those respects? Because I'm thinking back to something I made a video on it a year ago now. I don't know if you saw it. About there was a debate due to take place, organised by the University of Manchester, Free Speech and Secular Society, or something like that. It was called. Okay, and what they were going to debate was, is modern feminism censorious? Okay. And as part of this debate, they wanted to invite people that had been censored by feminism, by feminists. And as a result of that, this was before Milo had his sort of big break in the States. He was on the rise sort of thing, but he'd not started his US tour. They'd invited Milo Yiannopoulos to talk, but they'd also invited Julie Bindel. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Julie Bindel. She's a British radical feminist who has some very, very strong views on men. I think if you went back a couple of decades, she was one of the sort of female separatists that thought that women should go and live separately to men, and if we could just destroy all men, that would be a good thing. I think she's sort of mellowed slightly over the years, but she is a very, very forthright and abrasive feminist. And the interesting thing with that is that for me, that was the sort of perfect situation. People talking about Milo Yiannopoulos getting challenged. If there's somebody who would have had the balls to challenge him, it would have been Julie Bindel. And similarly, if there's somebody who would have had the balls to challenge Julie Bindel, it would have been Milo Yiannopoulos. The student union at that university, under, it seemed, the direction of the Feminist Society, and I think it's called Julie Lishak or something like that, who was the women's officer at that university, banned both speakers. They now platformed both speakers from talking. Milo Yiannopoulos because of his misogyny, his hatred of women, and Julie Bindel, not for her misandry, her hatred of men. That was okay. That got a free pass. That wasn't an issue, the things that she'd said about putting men into little barbed wire camps. But it was her transphobic comments that she'd made. But that seemed a real missed opportunity. And it seemed to show a difference between the feminists of Julie Bindel's sort of generation, which were at least as aggressive, but understood that you needed to have those discussions and those debates, and a sort of new wave, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It is about isolating and protecting your ideas from scrutiny and objection. And that's why they're so against postmodernists, so against debate. If you were to challenge, and it's funny because they'll say, "Oh, Milo, he won't debate. He won't debate." And I'm like, "Really? Have you even challenged him to a debate? Has anyone actually engaged and said, 'Hey, look, we'll set up a debate for you,' or anything like that?" And there's silence because they don't really want to debate because they're already right. And so you have somebody who's saying things you don't agree with, and you're just going to say he's wrong on your platform over there, and he's going to say he's right on his platform over there, and you're not going to share a stage because that's bad.
Yeah. Well, they treat people like that as if they're some kind of highly radioactive source, and that, you know, even the
Right.
debate's not okay. Just simply having somebody like that within 50 miles of a campus or something
Right.
is placing people in sort of mortal danger somehow.
And it all stems from this idea of that this is some group that doesn't deserve a platform. So it's like, oh, we've got the KKK guy, and the leader of the Klan guy, and he's not going to show his face. He's going to, be in his ceremonial garb, but we don't want him speaking. That he doesn't deserve to have a platform to speak on. Why not?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe your belief is I don't want him on my radio show. Okay, fine. But somebody somewhere wants to see him get annihilated by logic and reason. And then I want him exposed and want people to see that he has none and that the other side has it. Because that's how good ideas win, is exposing them for scrutiny and critical analysis. And now you see the feminist movement, SJWs, are becoming anti-skepticism. They're even saying the skeptic community, first it was the atheist community, now it's the skeptical community. They're not really real skeptics. They're skeptics when it's convenient. And we don't like the skepticism. We don't like them because, they're always saying we don't prove anything. And of course, we've always been proving everything that we do at all times because we're right. And then you see that people are slowly pulling away because they're realizing, consciously or subconsciously, that this isn't working the way that I thought it would. It seemed like it was working, but now I realize if I go with them, I don't feel good about myself.
Yeah.
It attracts you because it's like, oh, well, you're part of us. You're a oppressed minority. You're a transgendered person that's into incest with furries, whatever. Okay, fine. Hey, that's a marginalized group. I'm sure of it. You're part of us. We'll help you not be marginalized anymore. Well, that sounds great. I'm on board. And by the way, you have to sign up and drink this Kool-Aid just to let you know. Okay, that's fine. And you're on board for a while. But then you realize, hey, when are we going to start talking about my issues? And you said something we didn't like. Now you're gone. You're out of here. You're excommunicated. Because they weren't interested in you. They never were. They weren't interested in the issues. They never were.
No, and I think it seems to me that the argument is that I've heard so many times is, like you say, it's like, well, it's already decided that we're right on these things, and so why would you debate something when you already know who's right and who's wrong?
Yeah, there's no point.
No, and I think apart from the fact that that's a very dangerous place to start from, because who gets to decide who's right and who's wrong? But the other thing is, I don't think that is how we get to judge which things we talk about and which things we don't. I said this recently about somebody was saying about flat Earth. Well, we know the Earth isn't a disc, so we're not gonna debate that anymore. The reason we don't have those debates is generally because of a lack of interest in them, and I think that's the point. If 50% of the population thought that the Earth was a fucking disc, then we'd need to have those debates, wouldn't we? It wouldn't matter whether it was right or wrong.
And my view on debate is it's always important to do, and people, I see this and I hear it in my comments every now and again. It's like, oh, what's the point of debating? You're not going to change their mind. That's not the point. The point is not them. Exactly. The point is everyone else. You don't know. Exactly. And you might change their mind years down the line. You don't know, but
I never understand people who say that. Do they watch politics and listen to I don't know, whoever it is, whether it's in the House of Commons and they're shouting at each other and say, what's the point of this? They're not going to change each other's mind, as if they're doing it for that reason.
And it might not, but you know what? I mean, you change or you die. That's evolution. That's, the way of it. Yeah. It has to evolve or it dies, and it has to work or it dies out. And so it's like, look, it's my time to spend. I'll debate the flat earth. I'll debate, whether cheese or crackers is better. I don't know, whatever you want. Turtles versus lobsters. The lobsters, of course, are going to win, but I'll debate it.
Yeah. So is this, would you say that for you that this is probably the biggest issue of it all? Because I know it is for me, because it seems like it's a point that you can't get back from. Right. You can make bad decisions, but if you can debate those decisions, and you've always got a chance of coming back. But once you stop that process, it becomes a one-way thing, doesn't it? And whoever has the whip hand at that point in time gets to decide what's beyond dispute and what isn't.
Yeah, and I think Dr. Peterson said it better than I could have, where he says, maybe you are benevolent as the tyrant, and you'll come up with this utopia that works under your leadership. But as soon as you get sniped out, as soon as you get
Yes,
taken
exactly.
out,
Yeah.
then the people that take over, they're going to be far worse. Forget
Yeah.
about it. So it's going
But
to
you've set
last.
those ground rules, haven't you? You've set
Yeah.
those. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's a beautiful.
What do you think to the this thing in the UK then? This right? I don't know if you've heard about this right to debate idea at universities. Have you heard about that?
No.
So what that is, it was set up by a couple of people involved in the Quilliam project, and the Quilliam project were involved with Islam and militant Islam, and their aim is to find ways to tackle that, okay, and extremism in different ways, and to work with different groups, to work with public groups, government, universities, but also to work with Muslim groups to try and find ways to tackle it. And some of them that are on board with that have started this right to debate idea. And their basis is, and it seems entirely reasonable, is that actually not debating these things actually just pushes them underground. Right. So if you have some extremist preacher who wants to talk, let's say on a university campus, I mean, there still might be upper limits as to what you would allow on a university campus to be said. But what you would do is, if that speaker is challenged, and there was a significant body of students who found them objectionable, then what you could do is, rather than banning them from speaking, you can insist on a debate format, so that what they're saying will not go unchallenged. And they're kind of trying to roll that idea out and get universities to sign up, but also on a broader remit, so that it wouldn't just be about the whole thing is not just then going to be about Islam or religious extremism, but about other things as well. So if you had somebody who was there was a big brouhaha that they've got transphobic views or that they're very sexist. So say you've got Milo Yiannopoulos, let us say, who's a controversial speaker. He's going to go and speak at a university. If there was a significant number of people who objected to that, the students' union, rather than no platforming him as they would now, would say, well, no, he can come and speak, but if one of these challenging groups can put up a counter debater, then that's the format that it needs to take. If they can't, then they'll at least be allowed to submit half a dozen questions at the end. I don't know what you think to that. I thought that seemed a pretty good sort of middle ground on some of those things.
Well, the university or other levels of education are a weird sort of phenomenon in and of themselves, where at school is not reality. When you're studying, that's not reality. That's not what real life is going to be like. So there is a sort of danger where you've gone to school your whole life, and then that could become your life, so you're just an educator at the end. But that's not neither good nor bad necessarily. To have this, we're going to let you debate, that's good, but we're going to make you debate or you can't speak, that's bad. So if we're saying by these rules that we're going to put into place for this place of education, where the whole point of university is to open your mind to things that you don't agree with, to expose you to the worlds that you see, that people are different, so we pop your bubble for sure, so that whatever discipline you finally are done with, that you are a well-rounded person, and that that's going to help you in many ways. To say, well, okay, we got this guy coming, and these majority of the certain percentage of amount of people don't like what they have to say, so they've challenged him to a debate. Well, he doesn't have to accept. He still gets to speak because these people invited him. Then have your own person come and speak, and keep challenging him to a debate. But then if there's going to be a rule or something that says, well, they have to debate or we can't have that, that's the wrong way to go too, because you're forcing people to do a thing that they might not want to do, and you're going the wrong way. You're trying to fix the problem with the same problem in the other direction. That's
Yeah,
we
I
solve
mean,
all our problems with bigger problems.
I don't think. I mean, from my perspective, I don't think there's any solution that's perfect. One of the problems that I saw with it was that you'd have to be very careful that you didn't shift people onto another subject. So Richard Dawkins has been accused of being sexist, for example, but if he went to university to talk about the gene as the unit of evolutionary selection or something like that, to force him then into a debate about his views on gender equality or
Right.
something,
What's
that
that got to
would
do
be
with anything?
ridiculous, wouldn't it? It'd have to be relevant to what that person was going to be talking about. But what would you say then? I mean, obviously the initial thing that this came from was against what you would regard as extremist preachers.
Right.
But I mean, it would be perhaps a little bit over the top to say that on a university campus you're going to have a Muslim preacher coming in and telling people that Jews are evil and need to be thrown off the side of the mountain or whatever.
Yeah. Well, so what? Let the guy come and speak. What?
Even if it leads to more people joining extremist terrorist groups?
Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. I don't know. But I have my ability to let my guys come and speak, and we get to say it. And all we have to do is look at history and see that this has already all been played out. The Renaissance, the golden ages of all civilizations are when the marketplace of free ideas is just that, free. Before Islam became a thing, well, what did Arabs do? How many things do we have that are from that culture? Algebra and all these things.
Yeah.
Well, why? Because they had a culture where ideas were welcomed. Oh, you're this. We don't care what religion you are. We want to hear it all said in the same place. That was their version of, a university back then, was let's hear all the ideas and then let's decide which of those ideas is right and wrong, and let's do something about that. And every time any society has gotten to that point, it starts flourishing, and then something happens. Usually it's religion comes in and ruins it, but now we've killed religion, so to speak. I mean, it's dying. We won. Okay, it's dead. Now instead, something's replacing that, because always you have to fill the vacuum. An ideology, politically charged, is filling that vacuum, and that is the postmodernist ideology, where we're going to separate all these things, and it didn't have to be that. It could have been anything, but that's what it happened to be, and that's what's filling the void. And so it acts very much like a religion in that sense, where it gives people the same sort of community and feeling of belonging and a group identity, and it feels good, and we have, plus, by the way, we allowed it into academia unchecked because it didn't seem bad. It seemed like, okay, fine, whatever, give them what they want, who cares, all right. But when your academia is based on nothing, well, what kind of results are you going to get? What do you expect when you base your ideas and your teachings on something that's not true? Of course, you're going to get people that believe in something that's not true. So if we're going to have any sort of law or whatever, well, then let's just do what some places done, outlaw teaching creationism. Outlaw teaching things that cannot be shown to be factually true. But if you do that, you do run a risk, because you're solving the problem with a bigger problem of it might go the other way. So do what history has taught us. Everything is open. Let the people speak.
Yeah.
If a group wants to
No,
invite,
I mean, I'd certainly not against letting people speak. I mean, I've always been against things like the Holocaust legislation that there is in parts of Europe now. I understand through the history of some of those countries why they take the stance that they do, but it seems a sort of dangerous precedent to set. But you talk about the free marketplace of ideas, and it's a very it's an idea that it certainly brings me on board as an idea, right? But I don't know that it works the way in the modern world, in the modern social media world, that it works, that it does what it says on the tin, really. I mean, I'm thinking, if, for example, I take the idea of Thunderfoot, because he's somebody who always talks about the free marketplace of ideas. And for me, a free marketplace for ideas would be that if I had a disagreement with Thunderfoot, right, he'd make his video telling me what a total fucking idiot I am, and I'd make my video saying why he's a total idiot, and we'd all make our arguments, and then everybody would watch both of those videos and judge. That would be the free marketplace of ideas for me, is that both arguments would be made, everybody would take, and the best arguments would rise to the top. I don't see it as working like that. What would happen is that this is a very distorted particular case. He'd make his argument and 200,000 people would watch it, and I'd made mine and 4,000 people would watch it, and that would be the end of it. It wouldn't be based upon the quality of the argument. It would be based on other factors. But even if you have, this is the thing, even if you had two channels that were of similar size, or two groups out there of similar reach, they're not necessarily addressing the same people. They might get the same number of people on board, but there isn't the same kind of cross-pollination, the same, it's not the same group of people listening to both sides, and then the best argument is winning on its merits. It's people listening in line with their prejudices a lot of the time.
Well, yeah, it's better when you have both people speaking at the same venue, if you will. Then you get the audience for both people there. Yeah. But I wouldn't concern. I can't bring myself to be concerned with who does or doesn't initially. Okay, I've got my little tiny group of people that watch my stuff. You've got your lots of people that watch your stuff. And if I did the YouTube formula, well, then I could win YouTube and be big and famous. But there's problems in that. You look at the big names of atheism on YouTube, and it's like, you can watch any of them. They're replaceable one with the other because it's all fluff. But that's fine. We need that. We need the people that are big to come channel into the small. That's how it works. It's not right or wrong. It's just what works. People will say, well, why is this school teacher who's done all this good not get diddly or squat, and here's this football player, he makes one pass and gets all this millions of money? Well, we don't have a million fans come and watch the teacher teach. That's why. So if you make it a thing, then it will be a thing, but it's not a thing, and that's the way it is. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, I don't know, but you have to go with, I think, history. It does tend to repeat, and I don't think that the technology changes too much. It does change some of how we do things, but we are still evolving to adapt to the technology, not the other. And then the technology will evolve to adapt to us and our needs. So it might be true, everybody that watches your video will automatically like and your video, period, because they like you. And it doesn't matter. Your argument sucks, but you're right because we're your fan club. That might be the case, but you have to make the argument regardless, because that doesn't matter. We don't know what this is going to look like years from now, and we can't begin to worry about what might be. All we can know is what has been, what's worked in the past. Well, what's worked in the past is getting ideas out there one way or the other. Maybe we're writing letters back and forth to each other. That's the only medium. We're the only two people that know that we're doing this. And then years later on, well, those letters are uncovered and made public, and people start to read them because they're interested.
Like St. Paul, I suppose.
Right, exactly. Who knows this Paul guy? Who's this idiot? Some schmuck. Well, all you have to do is get enough popularity, and all of a sudden, well, these letters become a Bible. It's like, well, I don't want my words to become it's like, goodness forbid that lobsterism ever catches on, but it's out there, and who knows? It's a joke. It's supposed to be a joke. Well, that's not going to stop somebody from thinking it's real and true. But you have to go with your conscience. You have to go with, we've seen that freedom works before, so why would it not work now? Well, because technology, that's an appeal to novelty, the novelty of technology. We don't know that. Maybe it's true that that it won't be the best idea that wins. Maybe it's true that the most popular person will win. Initially, that might be true, but initially the best ideas might win. I don't know, but we've got to go with what you want to be true. Like Kant was really good in this, in that you project onto the world, if everybody did this, what it would look like. So if everyone always told the truth, wouldn't that be the idealized version? So I'm always going to tell the truth, even if it hurts me. And then that's your mentality. That's your ethics. So I'm going to, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as we've moved on to the social media thing, just a little bit, because I'll wrap it up in a minute.
That's right.
I just wondered on the social media thing whether you agree with the idea. It's just something that I've sort of wandered into more over the last year, is that it seems to have polarized a lot of discussions in a way that hasn't been helpful, such that it's almost as if you've got to select an either or, because what works, I mean, we talk about like what channels are successful and who has those big audiences and how people gravitate. It does seem to promote, I'm suggesting, perhaps a kind of tribalism, which means that you end up, it becomes like political parties. You're almost subscribing to a basket of ideas rather than picking things actually based on their merits.
Well, that might be it, because, but it is entertainment in that sense, where YouTube is now becoming more towards, like, it's going to be on TV. It's like, wait a minute, but we don't need the TV. We're the internet. We don't care about that. I don't even watch I don't have cable. I haven't had cable for years. I mean, goodness gracious, I watch it online. What's the point of that? But hey, that's where the money is, so that's where they go. It might be that people are joining this, whatever this is, for entertainment, and my argument stands or fails on its own merits, and that will always be true regardless of if people are my fans or not. I just, it's not something that I'm bothered with. It's just, that's the way it is. Whether it's good or bad, we'll see, because if it survives and it works for society, then it was, and it benefited society, then it was good. And if it harms society, then it was bad. So, we don't know.
Perhaps one thing that is, I think perhaps most people would agree on, but doesn't get mentioned, is that people talk about, especially younger people, not engaging with politics and issues as much and sat at home watching crap a lot of the time. I don't know whether that's any more prevalent than it ever was, really, but maybe that one thing that is quite positive is that the kinds of things we're talking about, even if they're polarized and even if they're wrong on either side of issues, it is people actually being interested in things that are interesting and things that matter and using their brains on issues, rather than just being fed information.
Right.
Or not even information, just watching fly on the wall documentaries or something,
Yeah, and I tried to, and I noticed I was starting to echo chamber myself, would be like, oh, I'm not going to watch this person. And I'm like resubscribing to people that I hated deliberately. I'm like, I'm going to watch their stuff because I don't like them. Not and it's like, okay, who cares about them? It's the arguments that I'm after. I want to hear these ideas and decide if there's any merit to anything that they're saying at all. And it's like, shuffling through the poop. Well, there's a gold nugget under there. You just have to find it. And is it worth your time? Well, I don't know. How big of a gold nugget? We don't know until we find it. So maybe there's no nugget. We were in the wrong pile of poop. Well, that's too bad,
Yeah. At least you know the pile of poop, though, don't you?
Man.
Better to stick your hand in the crap yourself than have somebody else telling you what it was like, which is unfortunately a lot of that does happen. I think is that people get it all secondhand. If you look at I think the classic example perhaps with that would be, say, Bearing and Christy Winters, who make a lot of videos about each other. There's obviously a lot of people who watch Bearing and their only experience of Christy Winters would be what Bearing tells them of Christy Winters. Now, that's
well, I
not
can
to,
tell you some
far be
stories.
it from me to stick up for Christy Winters.
I can tell you about Christy Winters. I don't
Yeah.
know about Bearing, but I can tell you about Christy. But you know, that's my subjective experience. She doesn't matter. Her arguments do.
Yeah.
The sort of person she is, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. She might be a really nice person. I don't know. She might be a horrible person. I don't know. It doesn't matter. What's your argument? Your argument sucks. That's what matters. You don't have an argument.
Yes.
You don't even, you know, when she debated Sargon, which technically speaking, they both lost because neither of them really gave a syllogism or proper sort of debate. But that's okay. Sargon still kind of won because if you muddle through it, you'll see that he had a point and the point was very loosely made. So he had like a technical victory. And, you know, when you're interested in formal logic like I am, I just see it differently. But at any rate, that didn't matter to me as much as I don't know which side. I'd love to find out. Somebody decided that we needed to have citations done as part of the argument. And I wonder who decided that, or if it was joint. I don't know, but I'd love to find that answer out, because the citations on his side are all legitimate citations. The citations on her side include at least 2 links to YouTube videos, and I think 1 to Wikipedia. And there's just not, that's not a citation. Like, oh yeah, Noel Plum did a video where he agrees with me. That's my citation? What? So you can see who had an argument or beginnings of an argument and who didn't based on that alone. And, you know, that's what matters.
I think one of her citations was a Captain Andy video, I think.
Yeah, it was, Captain Andy. Yeah. And, you know, I think
scraping the bottom of the barrel somewhat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they go together, do they? You can't have a debate format doesn't really fit with those citations. It'd be like trying to play a game of sport and go into a committee for each decision or something. You know.
The argument must stand or fall on its own merits. Citations are great if you're writing an essay.
Yeah. But
again, the citations you had were crap, and I would have just been like, look at that citation. What the bleep are we doing here? What's going on? I mean, this is a joke. But I'm glad that she debated. That's something I'm sure that people are like, oh, don't do that. You're not, you know, you're justifying his massage or whatever, you know, and, you know, it's a bad idea. No, we should encourage that, because maybe she'll learn, hey, look, my citation sucked. I need to do better on that. And next time I'll come with better arguments, better citations, and wipe the floor with the guy. And then more people will be interested in my stuff. Or, but the ideology they have is not compatible with that idea.
But like you said earlier, it doesn't even matter, does it? It doesn't matter if Sargon doesn't alter his position, if Christy doesn't alter her position. It's for the benefit of everybody else.
Right, exactly.
More than it is for them. So, but it's just one of those things for me. If I watch a Bearing video on Christy Winters and he's picking up on something she said, the first thing that I do is go and watch what she said. I'll click on the link, or I'll go find the link and watch the original. But it's amazing how few people do that, and that concerns me a little bit.
Well, I mean, you know, intellectual laziness is your own individual responsibility to not do that. And, you know, I've had somebody say, oh, you know, you have an hour-long video, I'm not going to watch it. Okay, well, all right, don't. Whatever, that's your choice. Here's my argument in short, because you didn't want to watch it. Where's yours? Where's your argument? And this one guy, finally I had to just let him go, you know, from Facebook, because he wouldn't tell me what his video was about. And it was like, here's a 3-minute video. And I'm like, does it have any citations or any data or anything to it? Go watch the video. No, you didn't answer my question. I'm never going to watch your video now. How about that? Just tell me yes or no, it did or didn't, you know. just tell me it had actual facts in it, then I'll look into it. And then if it didn't, then I'll know you're a liar. But at least you answered the question, you know. And you don't do that. When you don't answer that simple question of can you prove this, yes or no, that's a red flag. But now, well, whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
No
Well,
plum. There you got your intro. I forgot to do that. Oh well.
well, listen.
Edit it later.
I'll wrap things up, Dan. It's interesting to see where all of these subjects go, and whether obviously we'll never find it. We're never going to get to an answer where everybody agrees on all of these subjects. But it's kind of interesting to see where they all head on YouTube, and whether we'll still be talking about all these same things in 5 years' time, and whether whether you and I will still be talking about these same things on 5 years'
We
time.
might be sick of it.
Well, yeah. You can't tell, can you, whether it's all going to move on to something else or whether we're sort of stuck in a loop now.
I'm going to eventually just become a full-fledged lobsterist. That will be my channel.
I look forward to that point. Well, listen, thank you for joining me, Dan. I'll leave a link to your channel in the footnotes. If you stay online, we'll just have a little chat, but I'm going to stop the recording now. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye for
Be
now.
sure to subscribe and like everything that Noel Plums does, and give him money, and also give me money. Give us all money. We need money.
Just money, especially if you're an eccentric billionaire. That's what I miss out. I thought maybe I should have started a new channel making Muslim apologetics, sort of Wahhabist apologetics, because you might have a Patreon and somebody might be like sort of $50,000 a video or something. Do you know what I mean? You just get yourself known in Saudi Arabia or something.
Would I sell out for enough money? I don't know. Throw me enough money and we'll see. I won't, by the way.
All right, I'll stop recording. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.
Bye, everyone.